Bray Wyatt's first match as The Fiend was at SummerSlam 2019. 1 year later, The Fiend won the Universal Championship for a second time in the main event of SummerSlam 2020. Over the last year, The Fiend has turned Bray Wyatt from a guy who can hold his own in the ring against top wrestlers to someone who can dominate that same level of competition. The Fiend is Bray Wyatt's darkest tendencies focused and controlled. It is a transformation that dates back to his time teaming with Matt Hardy. So how did Bray Wyatt create The Fiend? Wyatt went almost a full year without wrestling, from the summer of 2018 to the summer of 2019. His last match before becoming The Fiend was on August 13th, 2018. At the time, Wyatt was teaming with Matt Hardy as the Deleters of Worlds. But Matt Hardy was injured that summer, and Wyatt simply disappeared. While he was on hiatus from WWE, some ominous tweets were posted from his account. Everything on his Twitter would be wiped upon his return, but tweets in the fall of 2018 seemed to suggest that Wyatt had been placed in an institution during his sabbatical from WWE. Wyatt tweeted the following comments on October 14th, 2018. Day 23. Subject is showing signs of progress at times. Violent outbursts are commonplace, spewing threats at our staff in multiple languages and reciting passages from the Bible. The next day, Wyatt tweeted the following. Day 3. Subject believes God as well as several other entities speak to him directly. And this part's a little confusing. They give him a scapegoat for 7 pulled a nail from his cell. He was attempting to repent through torture. Masochistic tendencies pray that after so many treatments he will be free of this affliction once and for all. Sincerely, Dr. M. A couple of months later, some tweets from Wyatt seemed to imply he had come to some sort of revelation regarding his own condition. On December 18th, 2018, Wyatt tweeted out the following. I'm not a god. I never was. I'm sorry I said it. I was wrong. I know the true God now in all his power. I feel that I am forgiven for all the wickedness I have caused. My soul is clean now. My mind is clear. I see what I did wrong. What was done to me, they took it all. I have so many things to fix. I realize that I was sick. My mind doesn't work like other people's. It gets lost and attached to ideals that are unrealistic and poisonous. My next journey will be to find my true calling. He then offered up the following thank you to the WWE Universe, saying, To all that have loved and supported us, we say thank you, and ask that you have faith in us. I was put on this earth to fix it, to change it, and I will not die until this is so. Goodbye, my brothers and sisters. The journey is far from over. The next time Wyatt would pop up would be in April of 2019, in the first episode of the Firefly Funhouse. It seemed as though Wyatt had transformed into a nice and friendly children's talk show host at the time. What he would explain later, however, was that he had taken all of his darkness, all of his violent tendencies and hatred, and compartmentalized it into a version of himself. That version is The Fiend. The Bray Wyatt we had known didn't have this advantage. The hatred and violent tendencies that he fed off of were scattered, unfocused, uncontrolled, and possibly influenced by both fireflies and buzzards. The Fiend is Wyatt's darkness, focused and controlled. That is how The Fiend has turned Bray Wyatt into an unstoppable monster. Wrestlers that Bray Wyatt could beat, The Fiend destroys. Wrestlers Bray Wyatt had trouble beating, The Fiend defeats with ease. Let's take a look at Bray Wyatt's record over the last year, since returning to WWE after the transformation he went through from the summer of 2018 to the summer of 2019. The Fiend would debut at SummerSlam 2019 on August 11th, 2019, and he defeated Finn Balor. His next match was on October 6th, 2019, and it was a Universal title match against Seth Rollins inside Hell in a Cell. But the match would be stopped controversially due to the referee's concern for Wyatt's well-being, as Rollins threatened to hit him with a sledgehammer. But what Wyatt couldn't accomplish at Hell in a Cell, he would at Crown Jewel just a few weeks later, when Bray Wyatt defeated Seth Rollins to become the new Universal Champion. The next time Wyatt would wrestle, he would defeat Daniel Bryan in a Universal title match at Survivor Series. Then the next month at the TLC pay-per-view, Bray Wyatt defeated The Miz. At the Royal Rumble 2020, Wyatt would defend the title against Daniel Bryan in a strap match and was victorious. However, the next month at Super Showdown in Saudi Arabia, Goldberg defeated Bray Wyatt to win the Universal title. The next time we would see Wyatt, he was wrestling John Cena in a Firefly Funhouse match at WrestleMania. Then since May, Wyatt has been involved in a feud with Braun Strowman. At the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, Braun Strowman defeated the Firefly Funhouse version of Wyatt. Then in July, at the Extreme Rules pay-per-view, Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman met in a swamp fight. And finally, on August 23rd, 2020, Bray Wyatt as the Fiend defeated Braun Strowman to win back the Universal Championship, his second time with the title, and his third World Championship overall. Now, the difference between the Bray Wyatt we used to know and the Fiend is perfectly summarized in his feud with Braun Strowman. Throughout this months-long rivalry, Strowman faced 3 versions of Bray Wyatt. By the end of the feud, Strowman had returned to his previous monster state. Strowman defeated Goldberg for the Universal title at WrestleMania 36, and he only needed a little over 2 minutes to do it as well. But Wyatt was announced as Strowman's first challenger for the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, but it was Bray Wyatt and not The Fiend who was chosen for the title match. And this is the version of Wyatt that is void of any darkness, violent, or sociopathic tendencies. So, not surprisingly, Strowman mowed through this version of Bray Wyatt, but their next match would not go as easily. Wyatt versus Strowman in a swamp fight was booked for Extreme Rules. This wasn't so much of a match as it was just a fight in a swamp. By the end of it, Strowman had been thrown into the gator-filled water and the Fiend had taken over Wyatt's vessel. When Strowman finally surfaced again, he had returned to his previous monster-like state, and not even Alexa Bliss has been able to revive the human in him. At SummerSlam, it was the Fiend versus the Monster. The main event featured 2 disturbed men who had traveled down many of the same roads and ended up in the same place. The Fiend would recapture the title, but Strowman's transformation has left him possibly more dangerous than ever, and a returning Roman Reigns would make his presence felt in the moments after Wyatt's victory. It appears the fun might just be getting started for these monster characters from WWE SmackDown.